been the impact of Māori broadcasting over the last 20 years, especially with Marae?
Well, the impact with, for Māori, it actually brings more stories about Māori to people out there, not just to Māori audiences, but to mainstream audiences. But I think the change is that a lot of issues to do with Māori are now becoming entwined in mainstream. So there's so Māori, I suppose you can say, in between a rock and a hard place. So do they either move on and follow these stories and follow them comprehensively, or do we follow the strategy that Māori broadcasting was set up to be, and to keep everything in te reo Māori? So therein lies an issue that I think Māoridom needs to talk about, because the whole issue is ki te whakaora I te reo. But in moving forward, issues to do with Māori have moved forward, and they're moving further and further out of the realm of te reo Māori. Mainstream are actually part and parcel of that whole strategy now. You get a lot more issues to do with Māori within the courts.
But you were the Māori Affairs reporter for One News. Why haven't you been replaced?
That is a good question. At this point in time, there were people out there that we thought would be able to come in and replace me. But unfortunately, a lot of Māori don't feel comfortable working within mainstream. I don't know what it is. I enjoyed my time at mainstream. It's a lot more competitive. You can push your kaupapa further, and you actually just concentrate on issues to do with te reo Māori. So I think the issue is that we need more people coming through broadcasting school.
Because Willie, you're on mainstream at the moment. What's the benefits of having Māori presence on mainstream channels, mainstream radio channels like Radio Live?
Well, see, it's not just about Māori faces, because I think there's a few Māori faces on mainstream here, and on 3, you know, we've had the odd one on TV3 also. It's about Māori perspective. That's the problem. So there's huge benefits. The problem we've got now is our strategy's all up the wop. You know,
in terms of
the Māori broadcasting strategy is all up the wop. This program here should pat itself on the back. It's been magnificent in terms of launching Māori people's broadcasters' careers, but it's been restricted and limited, you see. The policies are all wrong. So 20 years ago, the show was an hour. Now, in half an hour, we have to cram all the stories of Te Ao Māori in only half an hour. And it's wrong. And, of course, Tini said then there's obligations to the reo, and people don't know when they're going to speak Māori or when they're not going to speak Māori. We've got to get the strategies right. We have to be able to tell our stories. And we don't have enough of these types of shows across the channel. We don't have enough of our perspective across the channel. And Tini's right in one sense, in terms of some of our people feel uncomfortable going into the newsrooms. They feel uncomfortable because the policies aren't right. There's not a proactive policy.
I don't think it's anything to do with policies, Willie. I think stories are stories, regardless of whether they're Māori stories, you know, anybody's stories. At the end of the day, facts are facts, and you follow those stories.
Yeah, but you've got to have... you just can't put Māori kids... Well, what happens, and you know, because it's a bit different, because you had a bit of maturity about you. A lot of young ones go in there, they're totally intimidated by the environment. You hear stories...
You have young Pākehā mainstream reporters go in there. They go in there, it's 18, 19, and they do a brilliant
But young
job.
Pākehā don't carry the burden of the reo. They don't carry the burden of the treaty. They don't... They're not... You know, I think you've been in those Pākehā newsrooms.
Do you think they can give the Māori perspective, Tini?
Stories.
Do you think they can give the Māori perspective on stories?
I think they give a Māori perspective a lot better now than what they used to.
And is that because of the influence of shows like Marae?
It's influence of shows
and
like
the flow on into mainstream
shows
newsrooms.
like the Karere and all those other stories.
Of course.
Because there's a heck of a lot more Māori stories going out there, you know, or even on your radio show.
Yes. No, I think, I don't know what you're on, but with respect, but if you counted the TV1 news and all that, the stories are limited. We don't have Māori reporters there, and the perspective it's improved.
No, I'm going to correct you.
There's no doubt about that.
Because now the newsroom does intertwine or share stories with programs like Marae, programs like Karere,
things are getting
and
better.
Things are moving.
Things are getting better, but I know you're looking for a wage increase here.
There's still a lot more that needs to be done, obviously.
There's a heap that has to be done.
Such as, give me one or two.
We need to change the editorial side of things. We need to get our people... We should have Paola Maxwell and people like you and Shane in the editorial side, you know? It's happening slowly. We've got to have Māori perspectives. We've got to keep Tini out of that newsroom, you know, and keep her on to Karere, because she's going to hold back things, you know? There's got to be a cultural change everywhere, and we've got to get the broadcast...
Tini, last word, quickly, very quickly.
And you look great 20 years ago, and you too, Scotty.
Well,
things have moved on.
One thing that has changed, from when I first started with the Karere, I had this person come up to me at the airport. She was Maori and said to me, What are you doing? You're an embarrassment. You should stop doing that show because nobody listens.
Yes, and we've moved a long
Exactly
way.
like you,
We've
Willie.
moved a long way from there, and
you've
that's
been
great.
with
And
us,
Tini,
mate.
thank you for your contribution
stay
to
into
Marae
public,
over the last 20 years. Willie, congratulations on finally getting on Marae after 20 years. Right.